Let's try now. Hopefully the audio is coming through. All right, that's me. This is the main display. All right. Mike, I was just saying that there were some technical difficulties that I just got swamped with, unfortunately. And I think they're fixed. All right. Awesome. Audio's working, displays are working, everything's a go. So, welcome everybody who's joining this video. Today I am going to treat us to a special presentation. I'm actually working on some pretty cool concept art for my book that I'm writing and illustrating. And for those of you who don't know, basically, it seems like, one second. It seems like my audio is not coming in loud enough, but basically, you know, I'm working on a new sketch right now for an enemy design, for some concept art to basically a monster that shows up in the book. And as I am working on audio input, I wonder if that's doing anything. Mike, you just tell me if that's actually like audible at this point. I think it should be. So anyway, like I was saying, I'm working on new concept art for this enemy that I'm designing. And on the last stream, I was kind of in the early preliminary phases of trying to figure out what this should look like. And I think I've got a good direction of where things should be moving with this design. So guys, sit back and watch. Feel free to enjoy the work that's to come. I just want to give a warm invite to Mike from Yakovlev Art. He is another YouTuber and content creator, amazing artist. He's here on the stream. One of my other good friends, Vanessa, she just hopped in too. Welcome, Vanessa. Glad to see you here. And I'm about to start this sketch. So I'm reorganizing these artboards a little bit because I want to clear out some space to really do what I'm about to in a second. And that is to work on the side profile of this thing. So check this out. The rough sketch of this machine that I was illustrating kind of had this as like the side profile. And what I was doing was I was extracting a section of the book that was describing this. And so it basically describes this creature, this mechanical creature, as, first the name is called a Mecha Machina Centurion Mark IV. This is a type of military robot. It's a model and kind of brand that's associated in the name title for this monster. And the book describes it as a sort of obelisk with multiple drill-like feet and things of that nature, missile launchers, etc. And this was one of my first kind of representations, so to speak, this one right here, of how it should look. And I am just trying to get this pencil where it needs to be. Boom. Yeah. And so I'm not really super satisfied with how condensed it is. So I kind of want to stretch this out a bit. I'm going to start with moving this guy over here and then kind of expanding that body structure. And so I'm getting a few questions in the chat. For everybody who's typing, there might be a little bit of delay. As a matter of fact, I also need to kind of change one of these settings over here. But Mike, to your question, I'm actually streaming on Twitch as well too. I was supposed to be streaming on Instagram and some other platforms, but there were some technical difficulties, and here I am just streaming on two, unfortunately. So yeah, just YouTube and Twitch right now. Trying to get this guy up to par. All right. So I'm going to start by making this image a bit smaller right there. I'm going to move that out the way for the canvas. And for those of you who are wondering just, again, what exactly this is, so this creature, this machine, is kind of armed with a couple of capabilities. It's a machine that's meant to utilize both magic as well as just your kind of traditional artillery weapons that you would see in kind of like real life. And in the book, um, magic is something that's very commonplace and integral in day-to-day life. And so as a military weapon, this kind of utilizes both in a way that's quite formidable in its displays. And so back to our topic of interest here, I'm going to start by kind of just making this translucent, borrowing a lot of the same pre-existing shapes that I have here, and just kind of reformatting them, right? So one thing that I like about this is I like the structure that I have going on for the kind of head/torso. And I just want to give you guys my typical artist disclaimer. For all of my initial sketches, I always do these rough drafts to where they look pretty, I would say, chicken scratchy, as I like to call them. And the purpose of this isn't to get something that's like a perfect one-to-one representation of how the design is going to look in its kind of final form, but it's more so intended to just kind of capture the basic shapes that are going to be implemented into that. Believe it or not, this started off as something that was much more just loose and less detailed than what we see. And so, yeah. And Mike, to your question, I am not seeing two chats, as a matter of fact. That's something that I should probably go check on to see what's going on the Twitch side. Let's see. Taking a look right now. Yeah, nothing on Twitch as of yet. But just gonna keep that window open. Nice catch. And for those of you wondering, this is my first time trying to cross stream at the same time. So I would just like to ask if, for any of you all who are messaging me in Twitch, who do not get a reply quickly, try to have some patience. I'm gonna come back and take a look periodically. But I will say that most of my responsiveness is probably going to come from the YouTube chat, which is, kind of out on this other window that you guys can't see on the screen, but I can see it. So yeah, try messaging me there. Try watching the stream there if you like, and I'll probably get back to you much quicker. And yeah, Mike, I feel like that phrase, crossing streams, it's got some implications. I'm not even gonna go into all of them, but yeah, it does sound kind of funny. That's how the kids call it nowadays, crossing streams, I believe. And so I'm going to talk about this as I am, kind of just doing the sketch work right now. I'm going to cut myself short. Before I do, welcome, Old 3 Money. I think I know who this is. Maybe I don't, but either way, I am so happy to have you onto the stream. And so I'm going to talk about the form that we're looking at right now with this kind of shape and structure. And so what's going on right now is I'm kind of expanding that body frame, right, to something that's kind of like twice the size of what it was before. And I want to do that so that it doesn't quite seem as overly condensed and kind of flattened, I feel like, as it did before. Because for a construct that's this kind of, how can I say, intense, formidable. Especially when you read the chapter, you understand that this thing is doing a lot of damage. Um, I wanted to kind of represent that as well too, with weight distribution. And so I'm going to see how this design looks based on that. And Mike, I like your suggestion for sure. I think especially as the stream is only like 15 minutes into it, we're still like really early. And I've kind of jumped into talking about a lot of the art just like right now. So I think next time just having some time for people to kind of flow in makes sense. I will be happy to do that going forward. But in the meantime, I'm still going to talk about what's going on here. So I'm just, like I said earlier, I'm kind of taking some of these forms and I'm kind of translating them into regions of the body where they weren't previously located. And it's got a much more kind of quadrupedal structure that we're looking at right now. And for those of you who are on the first stream, you might remember that I was kind of like going back and forth with this a little bit. And I'm liking the quadruped kind of notion of this, but I still don't want it to be too, how can I say, too biased in terms of that kind of lateral body plan that I'm talking about. And so I think a good middle ground is something that's not too long, not too short. And I feel like this length that I've got right here feels about right. And I don't want this to necessarily be like too tall off the ground either. I want to have a low center of gravity. So I want those feet and those wheels just to come up a little bit like this. And now I'm going to start putting in kind of some of the other components as well too. And I'm going to also answer some of these questions on the stream. Mike, I'm probably going to stream, I'm thinking about for 90 minutes, maybe 90, maybe 2 hours max for this one. But it just really depends. I've got a cutoff time later on this afternoon. I've got a few things I need to shift my attention to. But I think 90 minutes to 2 hours should be a good kind of streaming time for me. Night Manga, welcome to the stream. Good evening to you too. Yeah, and I was just telling you, or I was telling the stream, I was telling everybody else, kind of what's going on right now. So it's still really early into the stream. We are about 16 minutes in. I'm looking at chats here on YouTube and Twitch as I am basically translating this design over here, also something from the last stream, into what will eventually become a more detailed side view of this construct, this machination over here. And I was also kind of giving this disclaimer that all of the lines and just the shapes and everything else that we're looking at right now, these are all very like rudimentary, really just, like thumbnail sketch kind of drafts. And this is just kind of meant to be a blueprint for what is to come. And so we have this frontal view of this machine over here in much more detail. This is going to be the side view. And to start with, I want these shapes to just really kind of translate one-to-one. Well, theoretically, at least, with my design. And so that's what we're looking at. We are in the process of doing just that. And for anybody else who's just kind of listening in the background or watching, uh, feel free to take a moment just to ask me any questions you have. If that's about the book, if that's about the artwork, anything about, you know, this or life, either or is totally fine. It doesn't need to be so art focused. But yeah, feel free. So I'm going to talk about what I'm doing here in the meantime. We've got this interesting kind of structure right around here. And this, as you've noticed, kind of starts at this point here. I'm going to go back and kind of correct that. Starts here, and it curves around towards the back. And that really comes at an intersection that's going to meet right there in that kind of blob spot here. And in between, we've got this control center. And I want to make sure that I'm capturing that in the side view. And so that's essentially what we're looking at with this. You know, this is wrapping around, and it's coming back around, and it's intersecting with itself in that circular motion. And so now I'm going to draw that control center and make sure that we have that embraced the way that it should be per the design. And Vanessa, to your question, yeah, where did I get my inspiration to the book? That's what Vanessa's asking. And so for those of you who are new to the channel or just hopping into the stream, my book, which is still a work in progress, is called Kenix. And Kenix is really meant to kind of be, how can I say, it's an allegorical fantasy adventure that's meant to tell the story of the human condition and of relationships and overcoming, I can't talk, overcoming various traumas and hard topics that, we as people face in life, be that internally or be that externally. And, a lot of kind of other philosophical, deep topics, so to speak, and the flavor of an adventure. And so, Vanessa, to your question, what was the inspiration behind my book? I would answer that most simply with a couple of things. There are a couple of real life inspirations that, come from just my own experiences in life, from watching other people's experiences as well. But then, that's just kind of more so talking about like the very deep core, maybe not so visible aspects of the book on first glance. I think some of the first things that you're going to notice as a reader or as a viewer of this channel probably is going to be the stylistic direction. And so with that, I would say a lot of that inspiration came from things like, cinema, video games, lots and lots of Japanese animation. So, manga and anime and just that overall art style really played a big part in influencing the approach that I took, as the style is Japanese manga. So yeah, various titles. I actually made a video about this not too long ago that talks more about the inspirations. But yeah, a lot of different things that were very near and dear to my kind of development growing up. And I want to share it with other people too, as they get to enjoy this story. I hope that makes some sense. And Mike, yeah, I definitely agree. That is a great topic for another video to come. I'm just going to take a look to see what I'm missing here in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not really too sure where exactly, like what platforms I'd like to take my streams to. But I think answering your question maybe in the other way that you were asking it too is in like what's the future state that I envision for these streams. If anything, I think the notion of connecting and just interacting with my audience as I'm making like the book and I'm in the weeds making the artwork and all of that, having that opportunity to actually get to know who is following and, like who's interested. I'd say that that's one of the biggest, um, kind of like objectives that I'm aiming for in these streams. And I definitely just kind of want to like keep up with that momentum. So if that's streaming on platforms like YouTube, Twitch, wherever's going to kind of get like more people interacting and interested in things, then that is a direction that I am actively trying to move in. I guess just like for the rest, I'll have to see. Yeah, Vanessa, thank you. It means a lot. What exactly is it that kind of grabbed your attention with, like my book or my artwork or things of that nature? I know you've only seen like probably just a few things in us talking about it casually here and there, but yeah, like I don't know if anything jumped out, what you personally have questions about, other questions about maybe, what things you'd like to hear more about. Feel free to comment away. And yeah, if not, no pressure. Totally fine too. All of this is still very new. And so for those of you who are wondering right now, like what's going on, we've got a lot of overlapping lines and shapes. One thing that I often do just to try to like help myself out when it comes to like differentiating what layer is what's going on top of where, is this. I will go ahead and kind of just add shading, add some form of tonality to things that are in the background of other things. And that just kind of helps me out a little bit, temporarily, even just to kind of keep my eye focused on what things are foreground, middle ground, background. And that's a very important part of the process, I would say, in just thumbnailing, my concept sketching, things of that nature. I'm just reading one of Vanessa's comments here. So yeah, she was talking about, I think you guys can see it in the YouTube chat maybe. She was talking about how I used to draw a lot of insects. And anybody who knows me through like art school or just like going back to, I don't know, like the earliest years of knowing me. Yeah, I think you're totally right, Vanessa. I did put in a lot of technical detail in those sketches, and in a lot of ways, like that same detail very much translates into what I'm doing here, what I've been doing with a lot of my art. So yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And guys, I'm gonna check Twitch for a second too. I'm getting a message from Old Money saying, "Notice me, senpai. You are noticed. I hope that eases your tensions. You have my attention." Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, and yeah, this thing that he's posting in there, the schematics. This was an inside joke for sure. In high school, going back to the whole technical drawing thing, I was into this day. I love looking at schematics. I love making schematics to my artwork, especially when I'm doing like engineering related things. But anyway, yeah, like that same level of technical detail. For those of you who were in on the last stream, I know for sure you definitely saw it when I was talking about like industrial design sketching and how a lot of the techniques that I was trying to use there translate into that. But yeah, for this, arguably, you could say the same thing. Same sort of techniques, a little bit looser, but yeah, schematics, very loose, engineering drawing types of sketches here. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you like them too, Vanessa. And looking at your next comment, Let's take a look. Yeah, I'm curious to see where this is all going to take me to. Um, I've got some goals in mind, and one of which kind of goes back to I think it goes back to Night Manga's comment from earlier, which I couldn't get to. But one of the things I'm trying to do is to publish the book, and not only for the purpose of making a book, but I'm trying to make a series of stories, through the means of a novel, right? That can be translated into various forms of media, including like print media, digital media, audio media, and hopefully with the intention of getting picked up or recognized in the means of trying to turn this into an anime or a game or things of that nature, as everything in the book is really directly inspired by those core themes as well too. And from a bigger picture perspective, the reason why that's so important to me, besides just like checking off like this really cool bucket list item, is because my main goal with Kenix, with this particular project and like multi-year endeavor, is to inspire. And in the same way how I was inspired by a lot of other artists' works in the past, I want to do the same thing with this, because I think there's a very valuable bit of detail and kind of narrative that can be shared with a lot of people who would appreciate this. So that's the goal, one of them. Another one would actually be like getting the book published. And back to Night Manga, I honestly don't know yet where I would publish it. I'm kind of teetering on the fence between a few different platforms, one of which being Amazon. And then the other would be through an actual publishing agency. And both of those have different requirements associated with them. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Amazon, believe it or not, right now. But yeah, it would just really affect everything from marketing to like the product and business model, all of that, like business blah 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 stuff. But those are all things that I'm also actively thinking about in the midst of all of that. So, hey, Christopher, welcome to the live stream. Guys, I want to give a warm welcome to a new guest that just kind of hopped into the chat. Christopher Kinlan is just on the topic of design. He's another amazing designer. He and I worked together years back. And he's a genius creative. He has a lot of experience with, a lot of the topics that I'm talking about. He's a big RPG fan himself. And yeah, Christopher, I was just answering the question earlier about kind of like what the objectives are with this book and really with everything else surrounding it, orbiting it, so to speak. And so the goal ultimately is to inspire and grow out and really just shake things up and get things moving with this story that I am actively working on and coming close to completing, at least with regard to the first volume of the book. And for context, for anybody else who's new, who's kind of jumping into the stream, and sorry for sounding like a broken record to some, but this drawing that I'm working on, this is meant to be new concept art for an enemy, a creature, machination, that appears in chapter 19 of volume 1. And this creature is known as, again, the Mecha Machina Centurion Mark IV. This is something that the main protagonist, along with his comrades, have to battle by surprise after infiltrating a highly secured place. I don't want to spoil too much right now. yeah, you guys should definitely pick this up as soon as it's ready to read. I know a lot of you, a lot of the followers have been asking questions about, when's the book going to be ready? Uh, where can you guys buy it? Where can you guys get your hands on it? And right now, I am still working on finishing up the manuscript. Currently, I'm on chapter 19. No, sorry, chapter 20 out of about 24 to complete. And so when that's completed, I need to put that in front of a editor. I have somebody in mind. They're going to give their look on it and hopefully their blessing on it. And then from there, when that's all approved and completed, there's a whole product line, whole kind of pipeline, so to speak, that I need to follow systemically in order to get this into your hands. And that's something that I'm really trying to do both as quickly as possible, but also at the highest quality as possible too. As a matter of fact, that's something that I'm trying to get more help on as well. For anybody who is following the Patreon or who is interested in backing the Patreon, what I'm trying to do is essentially to have you buy my time to make more content like this, so that I can eventually kind of do a bit of a lateral shift in terms of just career and opportunities that I'm affording via career, to focus more on kind of the magnum opus, so to speak, of my work, which really comes down to comes down to Kenix as an IP, as a world building project, ultimately as a passion project. Checking the comments again. I want to welcome somebody else who just came to the chat, Kimani Bolden. Welcome, comrade, to you too. До свидания, comrade. Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. And yeah, Kimani and I, we go way back as well. He was my roommate, one of them at least, in my university. And Kimani is also a very good, very well established, I would say, creative thinker as well. He is a phenomenal shoe designer. And he's also an architect. So that's a quick, abridged summary of some of Kimani's special talents and skills. But yeah, it's a quick intro. And Night Manga, thank you so much. I'm glad that you like the art style. Yeah, it kind of came about through just years of experimentation and practice, and it really means a lot to hear somebody else who holds it in a high regard. So thank you. And I'm just gonna skip a few things here, guys. I'm currently at the mid fidelity phase of this sketch, and what I'm doing, I'm kind of doing this very quick, rough, I don't know, iteration of throwing these fingers on this machine. And in reality, when this thing is all ready to go, when the high fidelity concept art is ready, you're going to have a level of detail that's more akin to what we're looking at right here for the frontal view of this enemy design. So you can see here, right, there's a much higher fidelity on things like the hands, the fingers, even this very kind of bony kind of wrist that comes out, and just everything with the articulation that's going on with this secondary arm, the minigun, the bullet chain, all of that. And again, eventually this will mimic that level of fidelity. And even more so, right? I'm going to take these and kind of bump them up a step further after I get the outlines to where they need to be, um, by adding shadows, some highlights, things of that nature. Again, in my kind of traditional uh, comic book style of artwork here. And I am super late on getting to some of these messages in the chat. So I'm going to start answering those while I keep on doing what I'm doing right here. And let me see, what did I miss? Christopher. No. First, thank you. That means a lot. And I'm super happy to hear that you're excited to get your hands on the book too. I'm excited to actually get this made. It's got a few more steps in the process to just undergo basically. But once those are complete, like the main excitement for me is just passing this around. Mike, for sure. Yeah, you will definitely get a signed copy when it's ready. And yeah, these are going to be, these will be physical books as well too. So I want to give people multiple options for how to get the book, what medium to get the book in. One of which will be print, physical, whereas another will probably be digital. I'm thinking about doing 3 different mediums. So, digital, print, and then finally audio digital as well too. I do want to make this into an audiobook. I do want to make it to where for those of us who are super busy, who don't have time to read through everything as quickly as they'd like to, I want to give them an option to listen to the book. And that would mean finding a narrator, a voice actor, things of that nature. And I'll probably keep the legwork kind of basic, I would say, for this. At least for this first go. Like, I'd love to add sound effects and things like that, but I just have to see what's realistic for budget, because that can get expensive. Yeah, great question, Mike. So Mike's question to me is, why am I making concept art like this? And to his point, his follow-up, he's saying that, like mostly game artists, 3D artists, people of that nature, animators, etc., they're making this type of work. But for, like a book writer, generally speaking, like these things aren't, like typically done. And I would say that you are absolutely right. And to answer your question, the reason as to why is because all of this artwork that I'm making, not only is a lot of it going into the book, the actual book, the digital and print copies of it, but for a lot of the artwork that isn't, for instance, like this sketch precisely, like might not make it into the book, maybe not even this one, right? There's going to be a separate art book to host all of this, and I want to make that its own kind of a standalone product as well too. So part of this is not just for like product placement and things of that nature. Another part of this, as I'm sure you can imagine, as I'm sure a lot of other artists or creatives listening into the stream right now can imagine, this is meant to take my ideas and to put them out into reality for me to see, for me to kind of manipulate, so to speak, as I'm thinking about how creatures move, how locations look, how they feel, smell, touch, everything. And this is just kind of like my way of visualizing that. It's my way of interacting with something that exists within words, right, for most authors and writers, and typically just in words for them. But the caveat for me is that I'm able to do both, and I feel like this gives me that level of fidelity that I need in my writing to make things more realistic within the story that's being told. So it's kind of a double, you're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing. Ooh, Christopher just said something interesting. It was saying animate it. Now that that will take a long time. And I think this is a good segue into something else, right? So for those of you who are wondering, I know how to animate. I'm not, I by no means would call myself like a professional. I wouldn't say that that's my strongest suit, even in my creative craft. If I need to, I can. If I don't, then I'm typically doing other things. But in the context of the book, in the context of everything else that's being worked on, I do want this to become animated. I do want once things are mature enough, I want a studio to pick this up and to say, hopefully, hey, Amir, we like your stuff, and we'd be interested in making this into an anime, or with whatever studio it may be, one that I feel hopefully might fit the brand and the style and everything else that I'm going for in this. That would be something that would be a dream come true. So, Christopher, that is something that I have in the forefront of my mind in every pencil stroke that we're looking at in my art. But it probably will be a responsibility that falls onto another team's shoulders, if I'm lucky enough to experience such a thing. And so, guys, I'm going to take a moment and just kind of do a quick, I guess you could call it like a retrospective of what exactly is going on, what we're looking at right now, yada, yada, yada. So you're going to notice something. I'm going to kind of like do a side-by-side really quickly. You're going to notice that there have been a few changes between the thumbnail sketch and what we're looking at here. Not anything that's like too significant, but just like enough to where I think it requires some attention, right? So here's our thumbnail. And what we're looking at over here on this side is what I've been drawing this whole time. And what's going on is I'm adding a bit of just robustness to the form, right? Like this is much more skeletal over here, which isn't bad, but I felt like there was something more to be desired right there in that area of real estate for the body plan. And, I think that something could be added there, right? So I think that what I'm trying to do is adopt almost like a cruise line type of body plan with this thing, to where it almost looks like a ship in some regions of the body. And, now we're looking at this kind of merge together potentially to where you've got your control center. You still have like 3 main body regions. If we're just kind of, like breaking it down into like 1, 2, 3. This region here is, like I hesitate to call it a head, but this is basically the head and torso region. And attached to that, we have our arms that go down in this strange way over here, right? So this is where the arms come about in this kind of space that I'm showing there. And then behind all of that, we have our control console kind of housed right there at number 2. And then for number 3, what this actually is, that fin that we kind of are looking at right here, that is an apparatus that works in a way almost like it looks like an airfoil to a certain extent. But also it looks like a halo as well too, when you're looking at it from the frontal view. And that apparatus is used to help migrate something that's known as elementa into its void, so that it can start to generate magic and spells and things of that nature. And that's something that you're going to see in action once you read chapter 19. I feel like I'm hyping up the book without like anything for you guys to read, so I'm terribly sorry about doing that. But you'll see in action more so. later on in the book, but that's what I'm trying to depict right now. And, at this moment, we're getting to a spot to where the body itself is taking a form that feels more appropriate to what I envisioned in the book. And I might make some more changes to a few things, like maybe I'll make that airfoil just a little bit less bulky. I'm going to bring this curve down a little bit more and reduce the profile so that's just a little bit lower, less high. I want this machine to look bulky, but not to look over encumbered. And so just that small difference right there does give a little bit more aerodynamism to the shape, I feel. And now I'm just going to erase a few things here, just for the purpose of getting some clarity on foreground versus middle ground and background. Same thing for the arm over here. Eliminating the marks behind it. Great. And so now we're missing legs and wheels. That's definitely going to be necessary. And so following the body plan, this thing's center of gravity is probably going to come right down to this region here, with its center being right here. And I want the legs to effectively support that as well too. And so we are going to start by giving some joints and structure to the legs. And this fidelity is going to be a little bit higher than what I did previously. So I'm going to just kind of treat this a little bit more seriously this time. So we have kind of like a femur, so to speak. And that's going to be covered by essentially what is an armor plate. And Mike, I totally missed your comment. Let me read that. Yeah. Mike was just saying earlier, as a 3D artist, for those of you who don't know, he is a very talented 3D modeler and artist. He's wondering how would somebody in general model something like this, just out of curiosity. And yeah, it's this would be a doozy, I think. But I think what's always helped me in the past, not speaking as a professional 3D modeler, but when doing 3D modeling in my past, especially when making things from, like thin air, my imagination, having a perspective of what the anatomy is supposed to look like from a frontal view and a side view was just enough to give me that information I would need for the isometric view. And once grabbing that info and moving into the ISO, at least in my experience, it was technically enough to try to get me into that 3D way of thinking about things. And that's kind of where my best luck was had. And right now with 2D not being complete for this thing, it's a little difficult to imagine. But I actually want to stay true to those words, to that notion, and reintroduce this sketch here. I'm just going to rename this because I've got so many layers, as frontal. Yeah. And I'm going to move this just a little bit closer, scale this up a little bit more. So this way I've got a good kind of view, even though we've got some things overlapping, but I've got a good view on the legs for this thing. And so when you guys are not watching, what I tend to do is go back and increase the detail in my sketches like we see here. And you'll kind of notice that, you know, the amount of effort that goes into it kind of increases. And it's a longer process, but, you know, by borrowing some things like this, I can start to imagine what goes where, when, for what, etc. Let's see. Mike, if you're still listening, I want to ask you about this really cool thing that you rendered. Mike was able to render, excuse me, an Ava from Evangelion. And, you know, Mike, he's an artist who's done a lot of different things in his career, especially with, you know, his renders and models. This one, when you did it, really caught my attention because, you know, like a lot of the work that I've typically kind of seen from him has been a lot of his landscape and cityscape renders, which are just sick. But this was different because, you know, you're dealing, of course, with a lot more anatomy, and, you know, you're literally making a giant like cyborg thing that's very intricate. So I'd be very interested to hear how that experience was for you in creating it. As I continue to create this thing. Yeah, so right now there's more detail that's getting put into the joints for the legs. These are very digitigrade in terms of just like the mechanical structure of the feet, of the legs. And one of the interesting things that I was trying to accomplish with this design is, you know, I want this to have a diverse array of movements when it comes to its locomotion. So while this thing can literally like walk, you know, like a, I don't know, like any sort of animal, say for instance, it also has wheels as well too. You're going to see, excuse me, you're going to see these drill looking structures here on each of the legs, and those operate in a bit of a mechanism wheel type of way. And you'll actually notice that there's not just one of these on each foot, but there's two. And so they both work in pairs to where when they lay flat on the ground, you're kind of, if you're looking at from a frontal view, you're kind of looking at something. It's almost got like a bit of a almost bow tie sort of appearance. Like that. 1 second. Like this, like that. You've got your treads right here. And yeah, depending on how this thing rotates, how these, you know, treads rotate, etc., it's going to give this just more flexibility in terms of just maneuverability, all of that fun stuff. All right, so now to add the wheels. I'm just going to keep this really quick and simple. There are a few cheat codes, shortcuts that you can use in Sketchbook Pro to make some shapes. This is one of them. And we just have a basic circle. If we're looking at this from a side view, we're going to pretend that this has all of its wheels adjusted flat. Then it's going to be flush to the ground, flush to the pavement. It's going to take a shape that looks somewhat like this. And what I'm doing now is I'm just grouping these elements into one kind of component, I guess you can say. And I'm doing that so that this could be reproduced elsewhere if necessary. So for instance, I'm going to draw our wheel there. You're probably wondering what this is. But it's going to start to make sense in a little bit. I'm going to start detailing the treads on this thing. And so this is very drill-like, basically, in its form. And with that, we're going to have kind of a, not that. How am I going to do this? This is a, how do I want to depict this? Guys, I'm having a bit of a hiccup right now. I'm going to come back to those details. I feel like if I'm looking at that, I'm trying to do this in like a stylistic way, but a way that's not just inaccurate from an engineering perspective. The treads that I have right here should still represent themselves somewhat realistically over here as well too. And for that to take place, well, I'll come back to it. I'd rather try to use the most of this time in the most entertaining and effective of ways possible. And so I feel like that part might not be the most entertaining of things. That's okay though, I'll come back later. So what I will do instead is I'm going to move this upward ever so slightly, like that. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to rotate this. Not the canvas. Forgot, you can't flip groups, but you can flip individual layers. So yeah, I'm going to rotate that. It's over here to the right in the ether somewhere. And I'm going to end up putting that in a somewhat symmetrical way on the body of the machine. And so, as you can see, we have our legs equipped, our wheels as well on each of the feet. And the next thing that I really want to try to focus on is going to be kind of capturing something that this design does over here. I'm hiding this for a second, but the gait, the length that you see for the arms here, you know, I want that same imposing, scale to be present within the side view. And basically to get that done effectively, I would say that these wrists, as a matter of fact, even really the size of the arms themselves, do need to come out just a little bit further than where they're actually at. And that's going to be probably the next work in progress right now. But not before I group everything together, because losing layers is never an enjoyable experience in this type of thing. So I'm just going to call this side view. Boom. And close that there. And for anybody watching on Twitch, it seems like the chat window, or something at least, has kind of frozen. So If you are not getting any love, I am very sorry. It is not my intent. Um, I think for this stream, probably hopping onto the YouTube channel for now makes the most sense. So if you are catching this message somewhere in the delay that it has, then I would just say, yeah, go to the bio in my link, in my Twitch channel's link, and there is plenty of room for you in this YouTube party over here. Feel free to hop in. I'll be happy to have you. Let's see. Okay. So now what I'm looking at is kind of this plan, this body plan that I feel pretty comfortable with from a kind of vanilla perspective, I guess you can say. And now I want to take this to the next level. So for that to take place, a few things need to be done. For starters, I'm going to make this easy for myself. And I'm going to go back and start to segregate the foreground, the middle ground, and the background for a lot of these guys. And that's going on right there. So we've got a rough kind of outline or fill, should I say, of this piece of the body. I want to get the top of the control center as well too, and that's done right there. Now the other thing that needs to be done is this. It needs to be distinguished as its own unique part. And that line needs to go away. So we've got that there. Now what's next is going to be the fun part. I want this to look a little bit more regal and a bit more imposing than how it actually does. And so, with that, I feel like right now it's a little too chunky, right? Like not overwhelmingly so, but just enough to where I want it to seem a bit more aerodynamic, a bit more, have a bit more oomph behind that design. I know I'm being, I don't know what to call it. I'm probably not making sense, but I've got this image in my head that I'm going to try to translate onto this, starting now. I'm going to merge that. I'm just going to keep that there for now. I'm going to kind of turn down the opacity on this. And this iterative process that you see where I'm constantly going through and tracing and then, like putting new artwork on top of it. This is something that really kind of follows a lot of my work ethic and just kind of overall technique, especially when it comes to making, complex enemy designs. For something like a mech, like this thing, the tricky part about it is that because this is a machine, because this is something that's actually manufactured within the context of my story, there needs to be symmetry. There needs to be a mechanical finish to a lot of this. And so you guys are going to see a lot of angles and a lot of lines that are all symmetrical with each other in the final product. That's something that's missing from this right now. And that's basically something that I'm getting ready to add to this right now as we speak. And so you'll notice that what I'm doing is I'm using this tool that Sketchbook has. And it's called the ruler, actually, or I think it is. But it does what you would kind of think, and it's probably not a ruler. It might just be called the line tool. It's got a ruler for the outline over here. But you can just trace along that line, and it's going to give you a perfect edge. And that's precisely what I'm interested in right now. I want to have this perfect edge to where when I'm making this creature, this machination, it looks and feels like a machination. And for that to be true, like I said before, it needs to look manufactured. And so I think I want that to mimic the other line that we have over there, like that. I'm going to have it probably do the same thing over there. So we're going to see a few adjustments to the angles here. And this is one of them, right? So we had this control console in the center. And now we're looking at something that's coming down flush like that. I think, I know for a fact at least, in my initial visualization of this design, I was affording this notion of some organic shapes to be present too. It's not all just hard lines, right? It's a balance of both organic shapes as well as mechanical and geometric ones. And with that, there's going to be some curvature that I'm going to introduce towards the probably the rear of the control center and potentially even the base. We're going to see. But I'm just going to start with this now, right? So we have our straight edge for that front-facing part of the control center. What's next is going to be for the rear. And we are going to start by having another straight edge, symmetric, to what I drew here. It's going to come down. And at a certain point, like probably right there, right here, I want it to actually curve. I want to curve backwards because this console still needs to have a level of structural support and just overall stability that comes along with it. And for that to be, what I'm going to do is take this, turn this into an ellipse, scale it up, and you can already see some of what I'm talking about here. So check this out. I'm going to make a curve like that. It's a little too thick. Like this. And I'm going to let that merge into the rest of this shape, this contour that we see over there. And after doing a little bit of cleaning up, we get something that pretty seamlessly goes into that. That's what I want for the console. And that shape that we see here is kind of foreign to the rest of the body. But that's perfectly fine because it's going to be accompanied by something else that we're going to see here in the front in a second. So another curve is going to accompany that. We've got a line here that's going to go backwards like so. 1, 2, 3. And then again, kind of following some region close to this spot. Not really too sure yet specifically where, but some region close by. Regardless, we're going to add another ellipse, and that's going to form this kind of crescent shape that we see in the body plan. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do more than likely is just like start off with this, really get that curve that I want, and then just kind of go in with the other shapes that I'm thinking about and making that straight. So we've got the curve, and now there needs to be the straightened kind of follow through that's meant to come. So probably a bit like that. Okay, and we've got this guy, we're gonna move that there. I'd say that feels about right. But, you know, I need this to curve down just a bit more smoothly, like that. Yeah. There we go. And so I'm going to make another modification here. Super small detail, right? But it matters. I want that curve to not be as extreme. And so it's got to kind of be a bit of a hybrid, so to speak, between this shape and something else. And I kind of feel like this might be sufficient to where it extrudes upwards somewhat. It's not perfectly symmetrical stretch. That's okay. But what needs to blend at the very least is going to be this portion. And let's just see how that looks for a second. I'm going to get rid of that. Is it too thick? I feel like it's too thick. Yeah, I don't quite like how high that comes up. I do want this kind of like blade protrusion to be a bit thinner. And so that's what's going to happen. We're going to kind of put that point right here and then stretch it out like that to there. That feels better, in my opinion. Not as overwhelming, not as heavy set. And so if we zoom out, what we have is a much more symmetrical, a much more kind of controlled version of the front of this machine. And that's exactly what differentiates basically, you know, your drawings from something that is organic to something that's a lot more mechanical. When you're able to show that difference, then, you know, I think that you're golden when it comes to just designing machines, or machines versus creatures in that regard. All right. So I'm going to put that there. And now I'm going to go ahead and start detailing the rest of the body, right? So it's got some components, it's got some elements of its design where it's not, you know, incredibly chunky. I guess it's not like composed of thick blocks of metal and things of that nature. It's got a lot of skeletal regions to it. And within those, I wanted those to intentionally look as though they were maybe like 3D printed or something similar. And so with that, there's this call for optimization in terms of weight, in terms of materials cost, in terms of structural integrity. And that's why we see certain areas of the body plan where there's this like, you know, void of negative space over here where you can just kind of like stick your hand through it. And so, you know, these parts of the machine are still very much present. And that's what we're looking at too. This is going to come up, and then that's going to come down. And now contours are going to be really important in depicting the overall shape of this thing, at least in a three-dimensional space. So I want to show an example of what that looks like. I'm going to kind of superimpose this frontal design again. So check this out. When you zoom in, you've got something that is, I just want to check something, hold on. Nope. Uh-oh. I wonder if I made a mistake with something that was, okay, no, I'm good. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. When you zoom in, you've got these regions of this design where it kind of, it bows in somewhat. It's got some concave aspects of it. Specifically, when you're taking a look at the sides over here, I'm going to draw an arrow to show you what I'm talking about. And I want those same regions, like right here on the side here, basically. I want that to be depicted in the sketch, and there's a way to do that. I'm going to show you how. I've been doing so much talking. Throat hurts. All right. I'm going to hide that. And now, check this out, guys. So this, as a matter of fact, I'm just noticing something. All right, pause for a second. What I need for this design is for it to have a bit of a crest at the top. That's an important detail that's missing. You guys are probably wondering what I'm talking about right now, understandably so. And I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to get back to this other important piece when it comes to how to contour things with this. This guy really should come down a bit more like that, or even like this. I'm going to put it at a side cut like that, purely so that the contours that are present and the depth that's present in this can shine through just a bit, excuse me, just a bit more. Oh my goodness. And yeah, that should be. You know when you eat something with pepper in it, and it's stuck in your mouth? That's just what happened. Okay, so that's going to go there. And this line over here can be removed. So first and foremost, I'm just going to do a little bit of that. Hide this. There we go. And next, back to the topic at hand. I was talking about contouring. This needs to curve down to a certain extent. Almost like, let me think. This is not accurate, not yet anyway. But there's a place where, I'll just call it the face, so to speak, of the machine, kind of rests. and that's in a region that's not the blade for this. So there's very much a kind of bladed section for this design, and that's the sharp part that you see from this section down, as well as potentially this section over here. And so when you take a look at the frontal view, as a matter of fact, I'm going to move these guys over. You put that there, and then look at the frontal here. You can see what I'm talking about, right? You can see how there's that side profile that's flush with itself, and how there's this affordance of real estate here in the front, as well as here on the side. Peju Taking, if I'm mispronouncing your handle, I'm so sorry. Welcome to the chat. How are you? And so guys, like I was saying, what's happening right now is that carving out of space in order to create that three-dimensionality and that depth is taking place here at the front. And that is partially being represented with this shape here, but it needs to kind of exude itself a little bit more accurately, I would say, in a shape that's not quite as blown out as the other. Something a bit more, I would say, like so. That's a really ugly finish for a thumbnail, but hey, this is the part where we're meant to try to capture the basics. Page you taking, I personally, it depends, actually. So I haven't done any drawing intakes recently. Most of my intake work is really design focused. But yeah, I'd be happy to hear more about what you have to say and what your questions are about that. And I will do my best to answer them. Okay, so curves are not good yet. The purpose of what's going to happen next is to make them good. And for that to happen, we really need to kind of effectively capture where things are starting and ending with this shape over here for the crescent. And here's how that's going to happen. We're going to start by taking our trusty line tool, and we're going to find something that almost intersects the angularity that we see between this guy going up this way and this guy coming out that way. So we need like a median somewhere between this point. And so that median is really going to kind of come about right here. And so, like I was mentioning earlier, because this is a mechanical construct, because this is a mechanical object in nature, that manufactured precision is something that in my design I'm taking very seriously. And as such, that angle and the angles associated with what we're looking at will also represent that too. So the convenient thing about all of this is we have pre-existing shapes that can be used to really show or even reproduce where that flushed contour should follow. And it's going to look a little bit like this with a bit of bending and curving and some of the other areas. But we're going to take that. I'm going to kind of scale it up like I did before, minimize it back down. And the next thing I'm going to do is, because this ends in a blade tip, that line at the base isn't going to, it's not going to come out the way that the default is showing it, basically. And in reality, it's going to look a little bit more like this in that section. There is some thickness on top of that blade, not much, but some. And so that's why it's not perfectly flush, or at least intersecting perfectly right there. But this gets us very close. And that's exactly what I want. All right, I'm checking the chats. Let's see. Can I give you a link video before sending? Which one is request? Let me see. Yeah, I don't know what that is exactly. I'm not sure what a link video is. Yeah, just feel free. Do you mind if you tell me just a little bit more about that? And so for everyone watching, what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of going back and kind of just manually drawing the detail here, because for my sketches, for like this design for this enemy, really for any of my artwork for the book, I don't want things to look as though they were so, how can I say, I hate it when things look too pre-manufactured. And so it kind of goes back to this notion of even why I personally give myself a hard time when it comes to copying and pasting certain like pieces of information in my drawings and things of that nature. Even using things like the mirror tool. That's like more of a personal artist inner conflict with myself or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with using those, but for the magic of my style to really shine through, I feel it's because the majority of it has all been hand drawn, without any sort of alteration with like mirroring tools or things of that nature, and a lot of programs that I use. All right, so I'm going to hide that. I'm going to layers, layers, and more layers. I think I know what I'm looking for. I'm going to erase this. All right. Yeah, page you're taking. I just got your link. Yeah, after the stream, I will take a look at it and I will get back to you and let you know what I have to say. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Let's see. Got this. And we're going to move that down here. And so the thing that I'm getting ready to change is that part. The reason why is because for that three-dimensional look that I need, there is an issue with one of these lines, and it's a small issue that's easily fixed. We have our depth coming in this way from our kind of point perspective, and this upper piece shouldn't be following flush with that same angle. It really should be a little bit more like that. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So from this point, it's going to go from that to this. And now, actually, I'd say that's better. Now this is there. And putting that right there. Keeping up with all of these layers. Guys, for anybody who's listening that uses this program for Sketchbook Pro, as somebody who's been using it for years, I am always going to recommend. Same thing for Photoshop. Keep your layers organized because, yeah, it could be a hassle going back and trying to wrangle these into order. Speaking of order, I am happy to say that the contours that I need are established finally for the frontal part of this machination. And so I'm going to start to kind of like dim the ghost marks, the ghost sketch in the background. And now I'm really going to start to put on this kind of high fidelity touch to some of these features. Starting here, we've got that part. Kind of come back and just clean this up a little bit. And the thickness that I have for the outside of that outline, there's nothing wrong with that. But for it to be balanced, this is more of a stylistic and visual technique that I'm going to show, but that should really come out just a little bit more like this, so that weight, and when I say weight, I mean certain amounts of detail on first glance as a viewer, because one thing is demanding a higher presence than something else. In this case, this kind of helps to counterbalance some of that over there. I even go as far as to say that this curve up here can do the same thing to assist with that balance and blend in nicely over here, like that. Yep, that feels right. Okay, so that frontal part is good. And now it's on to the control console. And I'm debating, I kind of feel as though okay, yeah, that angle needs to come up just a little bit higher, like this. Maybe not that steep, but that steep. It's going to come back this way. Probably end like so. Whoa, not like that. Not like that either, but like this. And I'm going to continue adding that detail here. And so the next part that needs to be considered just kind of goes back to the way how the kind of hood of the machine wraps itself around that control module. And that's going to basically come around like this. Right, so that wraps up like that. And then these lines will connect like so. Okay. So that comes down, and that kind of concludes the uppermost portion of the body. Now, mind you, there are still things that need to be cleaned up, like these contours over here. But when those are, things will start to kind of become more in sync with each other visually. But the main intent right now is to really just capture the kind of high fidelity outline, so to speak, of the body plan and to build up on that. And I have to say, I'm pretty satisfied with where things are coming along. There's still a bit of work left to be done, but it's taking shape in the way how it's supposed to. So we've got that, got this, and then finally that's just going to kind of follow this contour, butchering that, follow this contour that we have here. What I'm doing, I know I was talking about symmetry, before, and the intent with this, with the lines that I'm kind of drawing right now, what their intention is supposed to be is to provide more contrast between this line thickness and the rest on the body. And that's just for that visual distinguishing factor that's necessary when putting this design in front of your eyes. The eye is going to recognize shapes more clearly if the lines are not too thin. All of these small details, they add up into making the final product really stand out in the way how it's supposed to. That's what makes something memorable versus something that's a bit more, less memorable. And so now it's time to get down into the technical, that kind of nitty gritty. So what I like, not to toot my own horn, but what I like about the frontal design here is the fact that there are some intricate shapes and angles really happening right around this part, right? What I mean by that is that if you take a look at this region here, we'll just call it the scapula, I guess, kind of like a human scapula, but technically I guess it would be more of something back there. Anyway, this region, the scapula region, it actually kind of bows backward. And what I mean by that is that you have both of these shapes back here kind of starting off bigger and ending smaller into the space in which they occupy. See what I mean? They're actually going backwards like this. And what I want is to emulate that same angle of attack that those have. And this is how I'm going to do it. Instead of creating those in a way to where they are flush with the body like this, they're actually inverted. And so it's going to look a little bit more, let's take a look, like this. Those parts of the body, in reality, they actually come back a little bit more like that. And they actually attach themselves to, kind of like the main, I'm just going to say the upper console here, in a way to where like something sticks out from that and connects to something behind this. And another one where there's that second kind of thing here that goes back further and connects into the scapula piece somewhere down here, technically like over here. And we've got this cool angular juxtaposition going on. And then when we start to really detail that, let's just like dim that down. It looks like this. Oops, hold on. It looks like this. It goes back. And then we have a curve that actually comes down somewhat straight like this. I believe, yeah, that overlaps the other kind of bone-like structure here, which comes down like this and starts to curve inward. And then we get the structure that we're vaguely familiar with over there. And so let's start with thin. Yeah, so much talking. That's better. This piece attaches. This one curves out. And then finally, and that's how we got this kind of scapula and rotary cuff type of component here. And guys, it looks like my connection is unstable, unfortunately. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up the stream. It's been about 2 hours, and I've had a great time just catching up with you all, getting this work done. And in this case, I'm going to call it a day. So stay tuned until next time, and I will see you all soon.